Welcome back to another Explainer. Today, we're diving into an absolutely epic story of survival, near total destruction, and, well, incredible reinvention. We all look at BMW today and just see this absolute icon of luxury, right? German engineering precision at its finest. But getting to this multi-billion-dollar empire? Yeah, it was not a straight line. So how exactly does an outlawed aircraft manufacturer turn into an automotive legend? It's wild. We're looking at a genuinely gritty narrative here. This isn't your standard smooth-sailing business case study. Nope. This is an empire literally born from the ashes, and the story kicks off far, far away from any racetrack. Part 1. Forged in the Clouds, from 1916 to 1928. Okay, so things moved incredibly fast out of pure desperation. Picture this. It's March 1916, smack in the middle of World War I. An aircraft manufacturer named Bayerische Motoren Werke is set up in Munich, which, you guessed it, later becomes Bayerische Motoren Werke, or BMW. Their very first masterpiece was the BMW 3A. It was this straight-six aircraft engine that could somehow breathe at high altitudes where all the others just choked. But then, boom, 1919 hits. The Treaty of Versailles completely strips Germany of its right to build warplanes. Just like that, overnight, BMW is an aircraft company that is legally forbidden from making aircraft. Talk about a pivot, right? To survive, they had to adapt at breakneck speed. By 1923, they pivot to motorcycles with the R32. And by 1928, they actually buy a factory and start building their first car under license. It was this tiny, boxy little commuter vehicle called the Dixie 315. Going from high-altitude engines to little commuter cars in barely a decade is just staggering. Now, when they made that desperate pivot to their first motorcycle in 1923, their engineer Max Fritz came up with the Boxer engine layout. And what's absolutely fascinating here is that this design, born out of absolute do-or-die necessity, became a legendary engineering blueprint. In fact, BMW Motorrad still uses this exact engine layout today. Over a century later, it's such a perfect reminder that the greatest innovations often happen when your back is firmly against the wall. Part 2. The Darkest Chapters. The source material is very clear about this next period, and it's important we address it. In the 1930s, BMW really found its automotive DNA with the BMW 328, a lightweight sports car that basically dominated European racing. However, as World War II began, the Nazi regime forced BMW to halt all car production and fully convert into an armaments firm. The company's factories shifted entirely back to heavy aircraft engine production. And during this time, they utilized thousands of forced laborers who were subjected to brutal working conditions. Historical documents note this as a dark, indelible stain on the company's legacy. Fast forward to 1945, and the company is facing total ruin. Allied bombs had reduced their main Munich factories to absolute rubble. On top of that, the Soviet Union seized their eastern plants. BMW's back was, once again, completely against the wall. To put into perspective just how dire the situation was, an engineering giant, a company that had built record-setting aircraft engines and dominant racing cars, was literally reduced to manufacturing pots, pans, and bicycles, just to keep the lights on. Which brings us to Part 3, the bubble car lifeline. Now, what's really interesting about this next phase is the sheer contrast. In the mid-1950s, BMW was building the gorgeous luxury 507, but it was bleeding the company dry. They were literally losing money on every single sale. So to survive, they completely abandoned prestige for practicality. They went out and bought the rights to a bizarre Italian-designed microcar called the BMW Isetta. Picture a weird egg-shaped three-wheeled little thing with a single door that opened right at the front. It sounds crazy, right? But it worked. They sold an astonishing 160,000 of these little Isetta bubble cars. Sure, it didn't win them any prestige points, but it bought BMW the precious time and, more importantly, the cash flow they desperately needed just to keep the doors open. Eventually, though, that borrowed time ran out. By 1959, the climax of their financial crisis hits hard. Bankrupt and broken, the board of directors actually prepares to surrender. The plan? Sell BMW to their absolute bitter rival, Daimler-Benz. It was the final hour, and for all intents and purposes, the company as an independent entity was effectively over. Part 4. The Great Gamble. But then, on December 9, 1959, a dramatic corporate revolt happens. Small shareholders, teaming up with the wealthy industrialist named Herbert Quandt, straight up reject the Mercedes buyout. No way. Quandt actually increases his own stake, risking his personal fortune just to give Munich one last shot. They place this monumental, all-or-nothing bet on an entirely new segment of car. They called it the Neue Klasse, or the New Class. Launched in 1962, these cars took a massive risk by attempting to combine the everyday comfort of a standard sedan with the thrilling soul of a sports car. Part 5. The Performance Benchmark. The absolute pinnacle of this new class era arrived in 1968 with the BMW 2002. It was a massive global hit that essentially defined a brand new automotive genre, the sports sedan. Realizing they had absolutely caught lightning in a bottle, BMW decided to formalize this success a few years later, in 1972. They launched the iconic 3 Series, the 5 Series, and the 7 Series. It was a perfectly structured hierarchy of performance and luxury that is still deeply respected and, of course, used today. So, the absolutely crucial point is what happens next. In that exact same year, 1972, they formed a tiny, highly specialized racing subsidiary called BMW M. The whole goal was to take these new, dynamic production cars straight to the racetrack. And honestly, this was the exact moment BMW evolved from being this quirky, near-bankrupt Bavarian survivor into a true, undeniable performance titan. Because when you let a division like BMW M off the leash, history gets made. In 1986, they released the E3 M3. This car, it's legendary. With its screaming performance and ridiculously tight handling, it didn't just compete, it dominated. It quickly became the most successful touring race car in history, completely solidifying their reputation not just on the track, but out on the street. And by the end of the 1980s, their global dominance was firmly anchored to that legendary advertising slogan, the ultimate driving machine. Just stop and think about that for a second. It is a staggering leap to go from a bombed-out factory making bicycles and pots just to survive, to confidently declaring yourselves the creators of the ultimate driving machine, and actually having the racing trophies to back it up. Part 6. The Modern Frontier. From the absolute brink of corporate erasure, they rapidly expanded their global scale. They completely conquered the luxury SUV market with the X5 in 1999. They acquired beloved British icons like Rolls-Royce and Mini. They pushed the absolute boundaries of manufacturing by pioneering lightweight carbon fiber. And now, they're fully transitioning into sleek, modern electric vehicles like the i7 and that radical Vision Neue Klasse concept. They built an immense, unshakable portfolio. But as the source material points out, the journey isn't over. Today, the automotive world is facing its biggest shift in a century. The move toward full electrification and artificial intelligence means the corporate stakes are right back up to where they were during that 1959 crisis. But if we tie this back to the core theme we've seen throughout this entire explainer, from the Treaty of Versailles to the rubble of 1945 to the brink of bankruptcy, history proves that BMW actually thrives when forced to pivot. They do their best work when their back is against the wall. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly exciting thought. If this company's legacy is defined by brilliant reinvention under extreme pressure, what will the ultimate driving machine actually look like in a silent, electric future? The engines may fall silent, but their pursuit of the drive, that never ends. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope you found this deep dive into BMW's history as fascinating as I did. See you next time.